So let us start our discussion with the concept called as what, guys? Components. So we are going to start our discussion with the concept called as what? Components. Note down some information, guys. So I'll be giving you some notes. Components are the most basic components are the most basic UI building block of an Angular application. UI building block of an Angular application. An Angular application contains a tree of Angular components. Angular components are Angular components are a subset of directives. A subset of directives, comma, always associated with a template. Always associated with a template. A component must belong to an ng module. A component must belong to an ng module in order for it to be available in order for it to be available to another component or application. So where do you declare that, guys? This component is part of this module. Where do we do that? How the component and module are linked to each other? I'm asking a question, guys. Am I audible?
Yes.
So question is, how do you link component and module? How do you specify that? This component belongs to this module.
Using the
This
namespace.
is this is where you do that. This is where you do that. Right? So note down that point, guys. To make a component a member of an ng module, to make a component a member of ng module, list it in the declarations field of the ng module metadata. List it in the declarations field of the ng module metadata. Alright. Now, what is this? Whenever you want to create a class, or whenever you want to specify that a class is a component class, you have to decorate that class with a decorator called as what? At the rate component. A module, when you want to make a class as a module class, ng module class, you have to decorate that with something called as what? Ng module. If you want to do it for a component, you have to decorate it with something called as what, guys? At the rate component decorator. Now this at the rate component decorator takes an object, and that object consists of the metadata, basically which describes this component. Now out of that, you can see to this metadata we are passing what are all the properties right now. We are filling 3 properties. There are multiple properties. Alright, so you can see not till here, at least till here. So you see these many properties are there: animations, change detection strategy, encapsulation. Right, out of this, few are important, which I'll explain you. Now, what is the first one that you see in the list? What is that, guys?
Selector.
Selector. Alright. Now, what is that selector, guys?
I think it's like document.getElement ID, like that, what a dollar in JavaScript and jQuery.
Right, what is that selector? I have explained you. Right, in the last classes, maybe overview is what I have explained. Anyone can tell me what is that selector? Alright, so note down the description, guys. A selector is used to identify each component uniquely in the tree. Identify each component uniquely in the tree. So basically, now when you use this selector, read this, guys. The CSS selector that identifies this directive in a template. What is template? The HTML content that you see is basically called as what? Template. So when this is identified, because that is used as a selector, what it does, you see this. The CSS selector that identifies this directive in a template and triggers instantiation, the object creation, the instantiation of this component begins there. Instantiation of the component gets triggered when you use something called as what? Or basically where it comes across the selector. Now as a selector, you can use these things. Element by name, or if you are using the class name, you can use this. You can use it as an attribute with some value, these things. So how do we use those? Right, that as an attribute is something that we will discuss little later. I'll show you all these things, right, programmatically as well. Now what is template URL? What is template URL, guys?
Template URL nothing but it is reference to that like HTML file.
Right. So note down the description, guys. Template URL specifies the relative path or absolute URL relative path or absolute URL of a template file of a template file for an Angular component.
Can you from the starting and one more time?
Specifies the relative path or absolute URL of a template file for an Angular component. So basically, if you use template URL, you should not use something called as template. Both cannot be used together. Now, what is this template is used? You can refer a HTML file, or what you can do is here itself you can specify the content. If you want to specify the HTML content directly instead of referring to a HTML file, you can represent that entire HTML content here. Understanding the concept of components. Okay, so you cannot use both together. Now, if I just save this, if I run this, this is because our API is not running. Now, let me comment this property. Save this. You see, you get this. Understanding the concept of what? Components. From where it is coming? I commented this template URL. I have provided something called as what? Template. Now, you can provide your entire HTML content here, or you can provide it as a separate, that means you create it as a separate HTML and you can refer to that using this template URL. It can be a relative one, here it is a relative one, or you can also provide an absolute URL. But a point here is, if you observe, read this. An inline template for Angular component. If provided, if you provide this template, do not specify, do not supply what? Template URL. If you specify template URL, don't supply template. You use one of them. So if you use both together, what will happen?
It will overlap, but
Just to answer your question, overlapping or which one it is giving preference? I changed the order, right? As you said, overlapping, so I changed the order just to show you. So which one it takes priority?
Template URL.
You see, I changed the order, irrespective of the order in both the cases. It was picking which one? Template URL. Is that clear, guys? Then the next one is style URLs. What does the style URLs consist of? Now, in your app.component.html, you may want to use some styles, right? Now, when you want to use those styles may be coming from different files. So, where do you specify those CSS files? We don't specify it here. What we do is we specify here an array. Keep the cursor. Again, a path can be relative or it can be absolute. One or more relative paths are absolute URLs for files containing CSS style sheets to use in this component. If you don't have URLs, if you want to pass the classes directly, you can also use something called as what? Styles, inline styles. You can refer the style files, or you can also pass something called as what, guys? Inline styles by using styles property. Either you use styles or style URLs based on the need. Is that clear, guys?
Srikanth, what if I want to call multiple CSS?
It's an array. You just
Okay. So we can call multiple relative paths,
pass, right? An array of elements. Actually, this is
Okay.
an array. Right? So apart from,
we need to call one more style sheet also in the style URLs.
you can pass as many as you want, because in my HTML file, I may use, right, classes from multiple style files, right? It's not that I always have all my styles in one file. I may have it in multiple files. So I pass all the files, and out of those files, whatever you use here, it will be used. Is that clear, sir? Right. So apart from these three, there is also, right, another property which we use quite regularly called as encapsulation. So we use this encapsulation. This is something I'll explain you a little later about this. So we need some more time to understand that. Are these clear, guys? Selector, template URL, style URL. Are you clear with these three?
Yes.
Yes.
And next, again, it's continuation. If you look at the first point that you have noted down, all right. Can anyone read the first 2 points that you guys have noted down, guys?
Angular application contains a tree structure of Angular components.
The next point, please.
Angular components are a subset of directives.
Subset of directives. So, in the first point, if you observe, a tree of components. When we are developing an application, though in the last class, everything I was writing as part of app.component.html, in the real world projects, we don't do that case. In the real world projects, we don't do that. Because it is not a page, it is a component. And the point I have given was a most basic building block. It's just a block, not the entire content will be there, in that. Ideally, when you look at your content, for example, if I open this, you look at this. If you treat this as your page, in this page, you see so much of content. All this content is not coming from one component. Remember that. This is made up of, or this is created in such a way that it is basically rendering a tree of components. A tree. Now, how a tree structure will be? How a tree structure will be, guys? You will have a parent, and parent consists of what? Right? Child. And child consists of, again, childs. It's a tree. Based on your need, you create as many components as you want. There is no specific criteria that you should use these many. And each one can have. Like this. And again, you can create, every component can become a so basically you will have a tree of components. This will be your root component, and a root component consists of what? Parent components, and parent component consists of what? Child components. And each child component can become a, or can act as a parent component if it has child components. So you will have basically a tree structure of components, guys. So this is made up of multiple components. Everything is going to be a component. Let it be Angular or let it be React. Components are most basic building block of an Angular or React application, to that matter. It can be anything. This is one component. This is going to be one component. These are going to be one components. But component iteration. This is an iteration. And this can be another component. This can be another component. Right? This can be another component. Everything that you see is not part of one component. Basically, it is made up of multiple components. It's made up of multiple components. Is that clear, guys?
Yes.
Always remember that, guys. Angular application is made up of what? A tree of components. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create multiple components. And then we will see how we call one component from other component, how do we pass the data, all that. So we are going to understand. Basically, this is something called as component interaction. Right. So now, to start with, your application is under execution. So you may stop it. Now what I want to do is I want to create, basically, let me tell you what I'm trying to do. Now we have this, right, table where we are displaying list of employees, right? That portion I want to place it in a different component. This I want to place it in a different component. I want to segregate things into different components. So what do we want to do? I want to create a new component. Now what is a component? when you want to create a component in Angular is made up of 4 files. One is a component.ts file, component.html, component.css, and component.spec.ts. All these 4 files together will make up your component. So we don't want to create them manually. So instead, what do we want to do? We want to execute some command through which we would like to create those components. So how do we do that? You say ng g stands for generate, c stands for command, c stands for component, ng generate component, and what is the component name? I give it as employee list. It generates a new component. Right now, our application is having how many modules? Right now, our application is having only one module. Resulting, what will happen is, when it creates this component has to be made as part of one module, right? Component must belong to a module always. So which module it is updating, you can see here. It is updating a module called as app.module.ts. If you have multiple modules, you can specify here. When you are creating a component, you can specify as part of which module you want to make this component. Alright, so now if you go app.module.ts, you can see in the declarations, you can see something called as what? Employee list component. So it is declared that this employee list component belongs to this module. And then here you get a folder. In the folder, you will have all 4 files. Now what I do? I'll open this. You see, it has nothing. Employee list works. Now what I do? I'll just go here. Do you want me to make changes in the same project, or you want me to create a new project base? Because I'm going to upload this project. Obviously, at the end of the course, I'll upload all these programs, whatever I'm doing in front of you, I'll upload all these things. So, to have a clarity, do you want me to make changes here itself, or you want me to create a new project and keep things in a new project? So, whatever you
It's
feel
better to create a
convenient,
separate project.
right? I'll do it accordingly. So, what do you want to do, guys? Like, what do you want me to do so that I'll do it? Right? So,
Create new project.
okay. So then I just delete this. I don't need that because I don't want to make changes to this. So this is done. So now I'll close this. Let's create a new project. ng new program 2.